Hi there and welcome to Hyundai Power Products. My name is Adrian and today we're going to look at this Hyundai HY2190 20 volt cordless chainsaw. So I'm going to open the box, lay the contents on the table and then we'll go through some assembly. So I've laid the contents out on the table. First of all, you get the chainsaw head unit itself. Then we have the chain bar cover, the chain in this bag here. We have the battery charger, and finally the user manual. Now I do recommend that you read the user manual thoroughly before use. So with this machine being a rechargeable battery model, it makes sense that the first thing we do is going to make sure that the battery is fully charged. So we have the battery charger and battery here. I've just removed this little protective cover and it plugs into a standard 13 amp domestic outlet. So that will plug the charger in. And to fit the battery, you'll see the slot here. We point that blue tab down and it simply slips firmly down into the slot there, and that would be in the charge position. To remove it, we simply pull it back out again. So we'll show you these lights. So I've just taken the battery out of the box, and if I push this little button here, you can see the 3 LEDs. 2 of them have lit up blue, so there is partial charge in this battery, but I want to charge it fully. So I've plugged in the battery charger here. I'm just going to put the battery into its dock and push down. And you can see here, flashing red light. That means the battery is charging. As you can see by the broken lines on this symbol, battery charging is a flashing red light. If we get a flashing green light, that will mean where if the battery is fully discharged and has been discharged quickly, the batteries can get quite warm. What the charger will do is wait for the battery to cool down before it starts charging. So if you see the flashing green light on its own, that means that the battery is over temperature. It will allow it to cool down first before charging. When you see the red light on solid and the green light on solid, the battery is charged. So as you can see, it's taking charge at the moment. Okay, if we don't see the green light, but we see a flashing red light only, that means there's a problem with the battery or the charger. So hopefully we never see that flashing red light without green. So flashing red light with the green means it's charging correctly. So moving forward now with the battery on charge or fully charged, we need to remove the chain cover here. Rotate this knob anti-clockwise and that's the chain cover removed. Now I'm just going to lay the machine on its back in this orientation here, and we'll go through the way the chain goes on. So with this chainsaw, it does have the easy chain tension system. What that does mean is this chain bar can only go on one way, and I'll just show you that. As you can see, I'm wearing gloves because I will be handling the chain very shortly. So it goes on in this orientation, okay? What I'm saying is that the metal bracket goes away from the machine. So in this orientation, okay? Now the other thing we need to do is get the chain in the correct orientation. So it's very important that the chain goes on the right way, and I do recommend wearing gloves when you're handling the chain because it will be very sharp. Okay, I've just put it the correct way round, but that said, let me just feed it in there to try and explain this clearly for you. So if we're going to put it on the chainsaw that way, you'll see these little silver coloured links, and the silver coloured links are the cutting teeth. Now there is a small arrow indicated, let me just take my gloves off to get closer, a little arrow here on the chain link. But as you can see, the shape of this link, it's got the long sloping face and then the curved face pointing towards the end of the blade. And this little symbol here shows exactly the same. So if I just pop my gloves back on, I'll just flip that chain over 180 degrees. So turn the chain over. And as you can see, if I put it this way round, that link is now facing the wrong way. So when you're putting them together, just keep an eye on that. If it's facing the wrong way, just flip the chain 180 degrees. Okay, and you'll see that link, let me just put it in the slot just to show you. You can see that link now replicates the little picture because the chain cuts in this direction. Okay, so that's the correct orientation for that. Now we need to offer this up to the machine itself. So as I showed a little bit earlier, I've fitted the chain into the groove in the chain bar all the way along, and it's the correct way round. Now I'm still wearing my gloves at this point. Can I just say, as an add-on to the video, that whenever you're using a chainsaw, it's a very dangerous piece of equipment. Even though this is a small battery-powered unit, it's just as dangerous as, say, a 20-inch petrol chainsaw. So it's very important that it's only to be operated by trained personnel, and that you're wearing all the appropriate safety wear that's needed when using a chainsaw. Things can get out of hand very quickly with a chainsaw. So we've established that the chain is the correct way round. We know the bar goes on this way. I'm going to offer it up onto here. Now you'll see some grooves in this gear drive here. We just need to make sure that the chain sits down in those grooves. So as you can see, the chain is sat down on that pulley correctly now, and that chain bar should just sit there, located in a rough position, ready for me to refit the cover. So I'm going to refit the cover now. Back on, exactly the same orientation as I took it off. Just wind the hand wheel, just make sure I'm located, there we are. Just very loosely, just fingertips. So it's not tight in any way, shape or form. As you can see, everything's loose here. So, still loose as I said. I'm going to put the chainsaw the right way up now, and I'm going to sit it there with the end of the chain resting on this piece of wood. What that does is make sure that the chain, or the chain bar, is in the up position on its backlash. So just the end of the chain on that piece of wood. Now, as you can see, the chain is very slack in the bottom here at the moment. When I start doing up this hand wheel, it'll take up the tension on the chain. So if I do that, start tightening it up, the chains come up into place. That's starting to rotate further and further now, and I'll just keep going until that's firm. So, as you can see, that has tensioned the chain. Now, an important thing with these chains and small chainsaws, or large chainsaws as well, is that when you commence use of the chainsaw, the chain over the first minutes and hours of use will do an initial stretch. So this chain will become loose. If the chain becomes loose, it's important that we retension the chain. So this was the initial tensioning. What I'll have to show you now is how to retension it should it become loose. But as you can see, I can lift it out and it'll snap back into the groove. That's correct. So, still loose as I said. I'm going to put the chainsaw the right way up now, and I'm going to sit it there with the end of the chain resting on this piece of wood. What that does is make sure that the chain, or the chain bar, is in the up position on its backlash. So just the end of the chain on that piece of wood. Now, as you can see, the chain is very slack in the bottom here at the moment. When I start doing up this hand wheel, it'll take up the tension on the chain. So if I do that, start tightening it up, the chains come up into place. That's starting to rotate further and further now, and I'll just keep going until that's firm. So, as you can see, that has tensioned the chain. Now, an important thing with these chains and small chainsaws, or large chainsaws as well, is that when you commence use of the chainsaw, the chain over the first minutes and hours of use will do an initial stretch. So this chain will become loose. If the chain becomes loose, it's important that we retension the chain. So this was the initial tensioning. What I'll have to show you now is how to retension it should it become loose. But as you can see, I can lift it out and it'll snap back into the groove. That's correct. So I've deliberately loosened the chain off now. So this would be just trying to simulate what the chain would look like when it was stretched. So that's a scenario where we need to stop work immediately and retension that chain due to the initial stretch. So what we do, undo the hand wheel. I'm still wearing my gloves here because I am in a sharp area. So I'll loosen that right off, make sure everything's free to move again. I've just pulled it out initially, just a little bit. Okay, Now I should see that chain start to rise up into the groove, which it has. There we go. Continue turning till it's nice and firm. And there we are. That's the chain snapping back into the groove. So at this point, I'm happy with the chain tension. I'm just going to put the sheath on to protect myself from the chain and the chain from damage. And we'll move on to the operation of the machine. So you'll see on the top of the machine here, in fact I can take my gloves off now, the oil reservoir for the chain lubricating oil. So you simply unscrew the cap anti-clockwise and we can pour chain lubricating oil in here. You can see the little sight glass, you can fill it to the full level. Once we've got that oil in there, we can refit the lid. Now it's important that you use proper chain lubricating oil, not engine oil or anything like that. Chain lubricating oil is a lot thicker. If you were to use engine oil, something like that, it's going to make an awful mess and a lot more oil is going to come out than is needed. So chain lubricating oil in there, refit the cap, and that lubricates the chain and the bar during use. So, double trigger mechanism. If I go to pull the trigger to start, nothing will happen. There's the safety interlock and another interlock for the trigger mechanism. Okay, this here is the safety brake. This is the most important thing. Whenever you're not using the machine or you've finished a cut, always push this forward away from the handle towards the chain. Okay, now that's an anti-kickback mechanism. So let me show just what would happen if you were cutting a piece of wood and it got snarled or kicked back. Typically the saw would kick up in the air like this, and the action of it rotating up away towards you would make your wrist put the automatic brake on. This cuts the power to the motor and the chain will stop. So I'm going to put the brake on and explain the trigger mechanism. So on the top here, you pull back this slider on the top. I've got no battery in the machine, and pull the trigger for it to run. So that machine would now be running. If I let go of the trigger, I would need to pull this back to enable it. Again, it won't work with the chain brake on or with the emergency brake. So for the machine to work, I'd have to switch the brake off by pulling it back, pull this trigger back, pull the trigger, and the chain will rotate. When I want to stop the machine, I'd let go of the trigger and always put that brake on. It stops you starting the machine. Maybe if you're carrying it around and you accidentally pull the trigger, would stop that blade rotating when you don't want it to. So very important to make full use of this brake here. So with my battery fully charged, I can now fit the battery to the machine. I've just put my brake on. It simply slides down in that slot and you push it down hard home to insert the battery. When you want to remove the battery, you push down on this blue tab here. That releases the lock and the battery can be removed. So to insert, push down firmly. To remove, push the lock, remove the battery. Okay. So I'm just going to demonstrate on the bench here, it in use just for a few seconds, just to go through those controls again. Okay, so my chain brake is on. I would expect when I pull the trigger, nothing to happen. Nothing at all. If I pull just the trigger, I can't pull it. I'm just going to run this for 2 seconds in a controlled environment here. I pull back and start the chainsaw. Okay, when I let go of the trigger, it stops. I'll demonstrate the brake as well. As you can see, stopped immediately. I pushed the brake. If I try and start it again, it won't start till I release the brake and go again. Okay, so I think I've gone through all the controls, a few of the safety do's and don'ts. There is a link on this video to a video showing the correct PPE as well, so I do suggest you look at that so you know what protection you should be wearing when using a chainsaw. Well, I do hope you found this demonstration useful. For more information on this or any of our other products, visit www.hyundaipowerproducts.co.uk. I've been Adrian, and thank you for watching.